This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your source for the latest Iowa ag news headlines right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, Mark Magnuson, and Andy Peterson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Today is Wednesday, February the 26th, 2025. So glad you could join us here today. Coming up a little later on in the program, we're going to talk with Sam Trainor of agmarket.net and find out what happened in those closing markets. First, we're going to talk with Dysart, Iowa Farmer Pete Youngblut. He's going to talk to us about a concern he has over some of the freezes we saw from the USDA with payments over the EQIP programs and other conservation practices. Now, just a few hours after Pete and I had talked, we had gotten word that the USDA was going to authorize at least the first round of payments through those programs. But it's highlighting a concern that farmers are going to have with the future of conservation practices and whether or not they're going to be included in the administration's new budget cuts and the slashing we've seen to those budgets. Here is Pete Youngblut. First of all, Pete, thanks so much for taking a few minutes to talk with us today.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what we're going to be talking about today, and of course, you don't have to be just in agriculture to know what's been going on in Washington, D.C. We know there's been a lot of scrutiny going into the budgets, what money's being spent on, and we could go down the whole political spectrum, but we're going to avoid that today. But the thing is, we know that there's a lot of financial work being done. There's a lot of programs that are either in limbo or being cut, and there's a lot of consequences to those. And Paul, you're talking a little about some of those farm programs that you really need to rely on here in your operation. Can you tell us about the situation, the programs you're involved in, and kind of what the situation you found yourself in here?
Yeah, so we're big advocates for conservation anyways on our farm. And the opportunities have been there in the past for EQIP and CSP and being able to use those programs, which for us, it's been a huge benefit. It's helped us improve the way that we farm, able to do a better job. And so what those programs are doing is they're giving us funding so that we're able to purchase the equipment needed and actually perform some of these conservation practices. So when it comes down to the bottom line, whether we're making money or not making money, sometimes some of the practices you may have to cut if you can't make it work. And that's where some of that funding is going to come into play and helps us out a great deal.
Okay, so maybe talk a little bit about how you've been using the programs and what kind of things you've been doing on your operation. So folks that are watching, maybe if they're not quite as familiar with what we do, how you're making that work and how you're able to use those funds, because there's going to be people out there that are going to say, why are we spending money on this? So you've got a best chance here to tell them why that's an important program.
So the big things that are important with these programs is, for example, on our farm, we've implemented strip till, which what that means is rather than just broadcasting fertilizer over the whole field, you'll see the big floater trucks with great big tires. They go out there and they're covering the whole field and they're just flinging it out the back, right? So you've got broadcast spread over the whole field. And rather than taking that approach and then going out with a tillage tool and turning the field black, which when you do that, now you're going to have issues like erosion. You're going to have that soil washing down into the creeks and everything else. You're going to have, you'll see it going down the road. I think my dad has put it best. He goes, it just breaks my heart when you drive through Iowa in the winter and there's snow and you can see this black layer on top of the snow. He's like, that's just terrible to see because we're seeing all of that topsoil just blown away. So for us, implementing strip till is not a cheap thing. You've got to buy the applicator, that toolbar. You've got to have the right row units on it. It's got to be something that your tractor's capable of pulling. And then what that's going to do for us is it allows us to now till a 10-inch wide band right where that corn row is going to be, and put that fertilizer in the soil where that corn plant's going to be. That's going to mean reduced fertilizer application. So instead of putting out a normal rate to be able to cover all 30 inches of the row, we can narrow that down because we're right where the plant needs it and it doesn't have to spread out as much. So we're reducing fertilizer inputs. We're not tilling the ground any more than we absolutely need to, which means that the soil health is better, our practices are better, and we're just taking care of the soil that provides us with everything.
And so I know we talk a lot about, and that's just one of the many conservation farming practices out there, but it's been programs like EQIP and others that have been providing that funding that helps make it possible for farmers to make these switches. Because as you mentioned, it's not a cheap situation to go through. You have to find specialized equipment in some cases, or it's going to be different seeds and things like that. So obviously having these programs in place is not only helpful for your farm, but it's also an incentive to get farmers to adopt some of these practices that we've been concerned about and making sure that we can protect our soil and water and air.
It really is. With our farm, we've taken into account off the farm. I work with many growers discussing these topics and how we can implement that into their farm. And with the tools we've got out there, I mean, this stuff just plain isn't cheap. Guys, you can go out and you can buy a tractor and you could spend a pile of money on a tractor, but you're more efficient, your bottom dollar's better, and you're taking care of everybody else by not causing more damage to the ground than need be. So having these funds available makes it so that a guy is willing to have that conversation, because when you walk up to him, you say, well, okay, you're looking at a few $100,000 here worth of cost to get into this equipment. That's an immediate shock to the system. But when there's assistance and you say, well, but you can qualify for these programs, now you can utilize variable rate, and that's on the list. You can utilize strip till. We can utilize cover crops to keep things in place, and use that as a benefit so that we're not spraying as much. That's another practice that's very common. We put down a rye cover crop. We'll go out in the spring, burn it down, and be able to make strips and plant. All of these things are good for the health of the soil and health of the field in general. But if we didn't have that funding, nobody's going to implement it. They're going to go right back to the same thing we've been doing for 60, 70 years. So when we have these funds available and we've got that assistance, that giant bill that we're going to see up front as a farmer becomes a lot less painful, makes it much more feasible for our bottom line to be able to actually do it without risking going broke. Because when you look at it as an improvement or something you're going to take on, guys will say, okay, how much money is that going to make me? Or can it at least pay for itself to go that direction? And while farmers want to do a better job, if it's going to cost them a lot more and they're not going to get a return on the investment, they aren't going to be willing to do it. And that's just simple. Do I spend money on something that I'm just throwing it away? So that's why the funds are important. And I utilize it to the fullest extent, because quite frankly, it helps me make ends meet and helps make sure that this ground's going to be there for the next generation.
That again was Dysart, Iowa Farmer Pete Youngblut. You can find more on our story at iowaagnet.com. Right now, we're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, we talk with Sam Trainor of agmarket.net. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. We're back on Ag Matters PM here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Time to run down those closing markets. Being joined today by Sam Trainor of agmarket.net. Sam, what did we see come out of those grain markets today?
Saw some more weakness today. Corn and soybeans have had a tough time this week with some pressure. You got March futures going into delivery on Friday, so a little bit of pressure there. Also have the USDA Ag Outlook meetings going on this week, and many people are anticipating higher corn acres this year, so that's put some pressure on the corn markets as well. We have seemed to catch at some support, and we didn't break too far below that today. So that was good to see. Look to probably see maybe a little bit more weakness here throughout the end of this week, but maybe bounce back as we get into next week and start trading more of the South American weather again.
All right, so looking onto that livestock side of things, we know cattle had a little bit better day yesterday. Hogs were still a little under pressure. What did we see come out of that livestock trade today?
It was a mixed bag today on the livestock. The fats were down a little bit, feeders were up a little bit, and the hogs were the leaders out of the three. Looking at the May contract, looks like it closed up just shy of $2 here today. So continue to see some strength getting built back into the cattle markets. As you mentioned, yesterday was a good day, and this week really has been a good week on the cattle side of things. It's kind of been the opposite story of the grains. The grains have had a hard time, whereas cattle's been able to recover after a pretty heavy sell-off there the last couple of weeks.
All right. Well, Sam, anybody got any? Start that part. Well, Sam, if anybody wants to talk to the folks at agmarket.net about strategies or anything they need to be thinking about in their marketing plans, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Easiest way would be to give us a call here, normal 1-800-779-1515, or you can visit our website, agmarket.net. There you'll find all of our information for all of our brokers across all the different branches across the United States.
All right, Sam, we thank you so much for the insight. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks a lot, Dustin. Look forward to it.
That again was Sam Trainor of agmarket.net. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the closing numbers now. You can find those online at iowaagnet.com. At the close, March corn down 1.5 at 4.78 and a quarter. Soybeans down 6 3/4 at 10.24 and a half. Soy meal down 40 cents at 2.93.40. Soy oil down 47 cents at 44.97. Chicago wheat down 6 3/4 at 5.66. Kansas wheat down 6 3/4 at 5.85. Minneapolis spring wheat down 13.5 at 5.99 and a half. Oats were trading down 11 3/4 at 3.62 and a quarter. On the Merc live cattle down $1.10 at 194.62. Feeders up 15 cents at 274.37. Lean hogs up $1.72 at 88.30. Pork cutouts $1.87 higher at 97.97. And Class 3 milk 16 cents higher at 18.86. And that is the end of our closing market recap, and that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com, as well as follow us on Facebook, X, and on our YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribing and hitting that bell icon so you're notified each time we put out a new video project. Also, don't forget about the market podcasts, which are available 3 times a day right to your mobile device free of charge, with analysis coming at the openings, middays, and closings. You can also find replays of our Iowa Ag Matters program, Weekend Ag Matters program, and much more. All of it can be found at iowaagnet.com. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Andy Peterson, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.